Morning, everyone. Coach Candy here for some coffee chats once again. Welcome, everyone. Hope you are ready for Tuesday training. We are going to continue the conversation from yesterday as we had some rich discussion around having difficult conversations. Good morning, Myra. How are you? Cheers. Good morning, Deborah. And so I'm going to dig back into some of the conversation that we had yesterday. And I'm really going to focus, as I get my necklaces all turned around, and we're going to really focus on how to have the big conversations using a formula that helps you recognize and honor your emotions, but also pull that out of the equation. And so good morning, Elaine. Good morning, Terry. Good morning, everyone. Morning. Yes, ready. We are ready and fired up. And so yesterday we had some really good discussions and some things came up for everyone around emotion and passion and how do you still stand in your power and your voice. Good morning, Pet. Good morning, Kay. Good morning, Martha. Love seeing everybody jumping on this morning. And so I really wanted to dig in. I wanted to dig in and have some discussion around this. And I also wanted to share with you a formula that has been proven many times over. I've learned it actually from several of my gurus. And it's called the XYZ formula. And it is a way to have those powerful, connected conversations. Good morning, Carmen. Connected conversations that may be charged, may be difficult, may create that emotional reaction. And how do you step away from that emotional space and have a more pragmatic conversation that allows people to open up and listen? And it's sort of the invitation to explore different options. And so there's a couple things we're going to talk about. One, I want to get into the first piece that whenever you're in difficult discussions. Hold on, let me take a sip of coffee first so I can get started. There we go, I need a little caffeine this morning. So I want you to realize that first piece we're going to talk about is sort of the changing the frame of a way that you may inadvertently be closing down the conversation. And what happens is when we tend to have an emotional reaction, when we tend to have that space that's, we're being triggered, we're reacting, oftentimes we use the phrase, and I always joke with people, and I think I might have mentioned this to some of you before, we let our big butt get in the way. And so I want you to think about where and how your big butt's getting in the way, and it's that space of yeah, but. And so think about it, because where this really shows up, something that occurred to me as I reflected on yesterday's conversation, it's easy to stay in victim status. I can't, shouldn't, corporate doesn't allow around emotional expression because of the fear of vulnerability. So super excited. Yes, love that, Terry. And so I'm glad you say that, because I want you to realize, and actually I'm going to take a step back just based on what Terry just posted. There was a lot of pushback yesterday, or a lot of almost blame and justification, where that is allowing us a cop-out to say, I don't want to go there. That's just the way corporate is. They have this, space and environment. And when I say corporate, I mean business in general. There is a culture oftentimes. And what happens is nobody's willing to push the envelope. Nobody's willing to push that and say, you know what, enough's enough. We're not having real conversations here, and people don't have an opportunity to use their voice. And it's only when a leader steps up to disrupt that space that anything can be changed. And so if you keep allowing yourself to fall victim or to cop out or fall prey to the fact that, well, that's just the way it is in corporate, you have to suck it up and so be it. And we have meetings of the meetings that aren't critical, and I'm not allowed to demonstrate that I'm having an emotional reaction and I can't push back. And I'm going to tell you that oftentimes when I get people that say that, my first question is, have you tried? It's amazing to me how many people say, I can't have that conversation with my boss. And I'll say, have you ever had that conversation with your boss? And they'll say, well, no, I just know. So first and foremost, I want you to really watch your assumptions. What happens, especially when we're having an emotional charge and we're having a reaction or we're being triggered by something, oftentimes we drop into a space that's safe which means we start making assumptions to hide and to cop out and say, I don't want to do that. They're just going to respond this way, so what's the point? And I want you to realize that every aspect of that is you playing victim. Every aspect of that is you not willing to have the difficult conversation to see if something can change. And here's the thing. If you keep having a conversation with someone and the same outcome's coming, and you find that you're not able to have that conversation across the board, I want you to look at the common denominator, which is you. And I want you to look at the one thing that you can control and that can be changed. And that's your behavior, your language, the way you're showing up, the way you're choosing to react. So if you're not engaging with someone the way you want, one of the questions is, have I come at this from every direction, or is there another way to approach this? And so what I'm going to share with you today is a couple ways to approach this. And one of those is getting that big butt. Good morning, Paul. Good morning, Sarah. Is getting that big butt out of the way. And so I say that, and a lot of times when I'm doing my training, it's really punchy, and it's amazing. You can always tell who's paying attention and not when I do a big training, especially when I'm back in corporate, and I'll ask, so whose big butt's getting in the way? I will just see heads whip up and like, what? And then, I usually use it as kind of a little moment to poke fun and ask some questions. But the reality of it is your butt getting in the way? And when I say that, what happens oftentimes, and it's usually, we do this even more when it's people that we really care about and that we do have some safe environment with, especially with our kids. We tend to inadvertently disconnect and shut down a conversation that we don't even know we're doing that with. And so we say things like, yeah, but. So I want you to think about, before we even get into the big formula and the equation, good morning, Laura. I want you to think about that yeah, but. And I want you to just take a moment and think about, if you're talking, say you're passionate about something, and you might even have some emotion flaring, and you're trying to have a conversation with someone, and you're just like sharing your thoughts, you're putting it out there, you're fired up, and someone says to you, yeah, but, tell me how you feel. I want to know right now, when you hear the words, yeah, but, good morning, Jeff, how does that feel for you? I really want to hear from all of you. Hola. How do you feel? Where do you feel it in your body? And what is your initial reaction when someone says, yeah, but, even if they say it nicely and sweetly, yeah, but, how do you feel when you hear that phrase? How do you feel in your body? What happens to the conversation overall? So I'm going to give you guys a minute to weigh in. Good morning. I want to know what that feels like for you. I know sometimes we have a delay, so I'm giving this just a moment because I want to hear, when you hear the phrase, yeah, but, I want you to think about what that does to the conversation in that moment. A negative response is coming. So you already can feel what they're going to say on the other side of the yeah, but. So think about that. You're talking, you're fired up. It could be you're passionate. It could be that you're having an emotional moment that you want to share with somebody, and they go, yeah, but. And you're already going, okay, what the other shoe's going to drop? They're going to put something negative on the table. Okay, so that's one piece. Paul, not good. They really don't care. They've already decided what is going to happen. Yes, they're already bringing their agenda to the table. They already knew what they were going to say. Think about sometimes when you were a kid and you go to your parents to ask for permission and they go, yeah, but, and you already knew the answer was going to be no. It was like, why did I even waste my breath and ask in the first place? Because when they say yeah, but, they've already dismissed it. They brought their agenda to the table and they're not even present and listening to you. And so you feel deflated. Love that, Myra. I feel angry and it's in my chest and shoulders. Yes, the conversation is pretty much over. Good morning, Sheena. Yes, and so I want you to think about that. So that, first and foremost, whether you are on the receiving end of yeah, but, or you are the one that's saying yeah, but. And I really want you to start getting mindful about, we do not realize, we have a culture walking around going, yeah, but, by the way, you yeah, but yourself all the time as well. Think about when you're like, I'm going to get this done, and somewhere there's that little voice in you that's like, yeah, but we'll believe that when we see it. So think about ways that you're actually pulling yourself off task, or you've got a mental gymnastics going on, or you've got that upper limit. Oftentimes you're like, I'm gonna bring $1 million into my business, and somewhere your brain's like, yeah, but we've never done that before, so good luck with that, Barone. That's not gonna happen, right? And so I want you to think about where the yeah buts are showing up. You're not their priority. Absolutely, Laura. I feel unheard. So I want you to think about that. What happens is, when there's a charged situation, when there's conflict at the table, one of the most dismissive, deflating The spaces where you feel shut down immediately is simply in the response, yeah, but. So that in itself can be a game changer when you think about how you're having that conversation. Instead of yeah, but, I want you to think about shifting the frame to yes, and. And said many of you, I have some people, especially when they do trainings with me, they'll say, Candy, you emphasize and all the time, because I'm actually very deliberate when I say yes, and. And so I want you to think about, if the yeah, but is this space that's very deflating, it's very dismissive, it shuts you down, it makes you feel like you're unheard, it feels as if you're not a priority and no one's listening and they already had their agenda. What changes simply by changing the frame to yes, and? First of all, let me ask, does anything change? And do you feel it differently in your body? And what happens to the conversation as a result? So I want you to think about that for a minute. If yes, but is this kind of shut down, it makes somebody feel like, well, I don't even know why I bothered. They weren't listening in the first place. I don't feel seen, heard, loved, respected, valued. I feel like, you know what, that was just wasted breath. They're not present with me, whatever it is, that space that makes you feel almost small. When somebody says, yeah, but, they're not open and the lines of communication have been shut down. What changes when you feel or hear yes, and? Give you guys just a minute to weigh in on that one as well, because I really want you to feel into the difference. And it's amazing because I get people sometimes that'll push back and they're like, oh, you're so big on words and language and semantics. And I'm like, yes, because language matters. There's reasons we've defined words certain ways. And I want you to think about how you're feeling that in your body, because your body is a truth teller always. And I want you to realize that there are different ways you feel things, and you can tell whether or not you're incongruent and you're in alignment with yourself, or if you're being shut down and you're causing even more conflict. So if yes, but is actually, or yeah, but, because most people don't say yes, but, they say yeah, but, which is even more derogatory, they are really creating an inadvertent block and barrier in the channel of communication. Whereas I want you to think about, does anything change with yes, and? Carmen, heard, a positive response. They want to add to what I said. That is really important. So the and is an add in the conversation. Is it possible to have a yes and disagree with somebody and still have an open conversation? Can you still move forward and explore options when someone says yes and? And so I want you to think about that, because what that says is that you heard somebody. And when you feel heard, don't you also feel like you've been seen, like you've been valued, like you've been respected, like you've been loved? And whether or not someone's disagreeing with you, they're still saying, yes, I see you, I hear you, and I have something else I want to add or offer to the conversation. Terry, I like yes, but when people are encouraging me with it, but occasionally people use the yes and to do no, but in a sneaky way. Generally, yes is very encouraging and keeps conversation open. Okay, so I'm going to make a point on that. That's actually really good. First of all, tone is everything. It's one of the reasons why email and text are not your best line, especially when you're having conflict. I am going to throw this out there and really challenge all of you. If you are having conflict, or if you are having a difficult space with someone, never, ever, 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 ever use text and email to resolve that conflict. It is the absolute worst space, because what you do is you take 80% of the conversation out of the equation, because tone, body language, energy are not part of the equation. And it amazes me how many people want to have these big conversations through text or through email, when either pick up the phone or go walk over to someone's desk and have that conversation. When you can see someone eye to eye, and when you can get in a space where you're energetically matching them, that is where you have courage. It is a cop-out and a coward's way to have a big, difficult conversation via email and text. And I'm just going to put that out there. I am not even going to mince words, because I feel very strongly that one of the reasons we have the lack of communication, especially in a corporate space, is because people rely on hiding behind their damn computer screen or their iPhone instead of having real necessary conversations. And so I want you to absolutely challenge yourself that in order to have a courageous, connected conversation, stop copping out and having that conversation behind a screen, behind an email, behind a text. That's a bunch of bullshit, truthfully. And I want you to step up and realize that the only way you can have that conversation is to have it. So that being said, tonality and body language play a huge role in that conversation. And there are people that may manipulate the yes and be kind of snarky about it. I also want you to realize that if you're being triggered by the yes and, there might be a piece in it that you're not holding yourself accountable. Because I absolutely will use the and when I'm holding someone accountable, especially if it's a higher level executive that I'm working with in a coaching capacity, where they'll tell me they want to do something, or they'll tell me something's not right. And my response to them is and. Because my response is, so what are you going to do about it as the leader of this organization? And I'm going to put the accountability back on you because you don't get a space to cop out here. So I do want you to watch. Sometimes there is, and very rarely is there the space where somebody's really being snarky versus they may be challenging you and holding you accountable. So I want you to notice, this is why feeling into what's showing up for you in any conversation, especially in charged or conflicted conversations, is so important. You need to check yourself first before you put all that onus and blame on someone else for how they're showing up with you, because you get to ask, how's my energy right now? Are they just responding to the fact that I'm being a little snarky and a little sarcastic and a little shitty in the moment? Or am I copping out being a coward and not stepping forward and saying what needs to be said? And if that's their response, am I firing things that are purposely triggering them, or am I stepping into a space to listen for understanding because I'm seeking to resolve an issue and I'm seeking for a solution? One of the things that is missing in most conversations is personal responsibility on both sides. And it's until you, as a person that can control what you believe, expect, say, think, and do, starts to manage and control your own space and ask, how am I showing up right now? Am I showing up wide open, or am I showing up ready for a fight? Because there's an energy that shows up with you if underneath you're like, yeah, we're going to have this conversation and I'm going to use these tools Candy said, but I know. And so if you're still running that yeah, but in the back of your head, and you're still sitting there going, I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop and I'm just waiting for the sucker punch, I guarantee you are not showing up wide open to have the conversation that matches the yes and. Your energy is playing into that space too. So if you find that somebody is being snarky about the yes and, then I want you to first ask yourself, how am I showing up right now? Am I showing up full out? Am I showing up courageously? Am I showing up to take responsibility? Or am I playing into this energy? And if that person is being snarky, it's the perfect opportunity to get into the XYZ formula, which I'm going to share in just a moment. I want to read some of these comments. Gets more conversation going. Yes. Yes, and is a green light. Ooh, I love that, Laura. Absolutely agree. Good morning, Robin. Great point, great topic. I gave myself a birthday gift this year that once a month I would gather a style of women together and have a lunch or dinner where we could have real conversations face to face. So important. Yes, it's amazing to me how people think they're going to have real communications and do it. Now, if you can't be face to face, I would say get on a video with somebody and at least you can feel them, you can see them. But the fact that we rely on a two-dimensional space, which is just written language, we are 70 to 80% of your communication is body language. It's energy. It's that space between you. It's eye contact. It's tonality. And when you take that out of the equation, you're taking out the opportunity to really deeply connect and to communicate. It's why video has become so powerful, because it gives us an even bigger dimension than just our phone. So you can see people, you can react to people. I also want you to realize that that yes and is a space that for some people you really get kind of fired up and charged. And I had a client once, and I'm so not even kidding, this cracks me up every time I say this. She actually pushed back super hard on me. She's like, Candy, it's easier to say but than and. I said, that's an interesting response. Help me understand how that's possible. And I said, because linguistically, so let's just talk about it from a pragmatic linguistic standpoint. Let's take all the emotion out of it. Last I checked, but, B-U-T, and yes are both three-letter words. Anybody dispute that? B-U-T, Y-E-S, Three letters, three letters, three letters. Yes and but, or but and yes, are both single syllable words. No dispute there either, right? So then I said to her, have you ever been around a small child who was learning their vocabulary, learning the English language for the first time? Or somebody who comes from another country who's learning English as a second language? What are typically the most challenging letters in our alphabet for a child to form when they're learning the English language? It's usually letters like M, P, and B. So linguistically, it's actually easier for a child to say the word yes than it is for them to form the word but, because they struggle with that B. So again, help me understand where the logic is that but is easier to say than yes. No, what it is but has become a habit where yes is something that needs to be learned. And so when you recognize the BS story you keep telling yourself about, well, it's easier to say yeah, but than yes and. No, it's just a habit you acquired, and now it's become an automated response, just like it is when you brush your teeth. How many of you are really present when you brush your teeth? By the way, if you want to find out if you're really present, buy one of those really cool, my sister got me one that was way over the top. It was way beyond what I asked for, but it was one of those Oral-B toothbrushes, and mine you can actually track on your phone, that if you want to know how present you are, it actually shows where you're being too aggressive and where you're missed an area or whatever. It's ridiculous. And I would challenge anybody that tells me they're being present brushing their teeth. It has become an automated response. Same with yeah, but. And so I want you to get really honest and take an ownership in that space. So I want you to recognize if you're not, because at the end of the day, if you're not getting the outcome you want for the conversations you're having, the onus lands on you. Because you can't change the other person. You can redirect how you show up and your language to open up a way to influence them to a different space. Now, sometimes you're just not going to get somebody there, and then you have to decide, which battle am I going to fight? How much energy am I going to put into this? I think I'm done. Great, we're going to agree to disagree and go on our merry way. And at the end of the day, it is your responsibility to stand in that space to make that decision, because you cannot change anybody else's way that they think, what they expect, what they believe, what they say, or what they do, and that includes your children. So if you are not getting the results you want, it's an opportunity for you to get really clear and say, how am I showing up right now? Am I showing up in a place that invites, or am I being a little snarky? Am I putting it out there to be kind of like sarcastic to say, yeah, and, or am I saying, yes, and I do really see you and hear you, and I invite you into this conversation, and I want to offer something else to consider, because that's what moves us into the XYZ conversation. It's a formula. And like I said, there's coaches and therapists and marriage counselors, and this is not something new, but this is something that is truly a game changer when you're having those very big conversations, especially if it's something that's an area that gets you charged up multiple times and you find yourself spinning, or you find that it's a repeated activity or repeated dialogue that keeps showing up, that you feel like you're at an impasse and you can't move forward. And so what I want you to do, and let me see, yes, okay, Terry, yes forces you to stop thinking about yourself and actually listen to and appreciate what the other person is saying. If you're stuck in your own head and you want your opinion to win, but is definitely easier than yes. Absolutely. And again, it's the story you keep telling yourself, and it's whether or not you're being self-absorbed or you're being in a space to serve. You can't be in both spaces at the same time, by the way. You cannot be in a space to be open and serve and be all about yourself at the same time. If it's all about what you need in your agenda and you're only firing on that cylinder, know that you're staying in a very selfish, very arrogant, and very shut down space. If you're looking at, and I'm not a fan of the expression win-win. Win-win implies there's a loss somewhere. It's a balancing equation. I am more of a fan of a win-win-win equation. I want a win for you, a win for me, and a win for anyone involved in the outcome of the decision we're about to make. I want to make sure that the win is a collective good for all who may have to or choose to participate in this space. I want to make sure that the win is a global win for the organization, the environment, our family, whatever it might be. And so when you come at it as a win-win-win, it takes even less power out of your agenda and your need to be right. And so it's also the reason why I don't like the word compromise, because compromise, the way we define it versus its actual definition implies that someone's going to give a piece and someone's going to give a piece and you're both going to lose. I don't want a losing environment. I want an environment where we can let go of the agendas and come to the table in a place to listen for understanding, not a listening to respond. And what happens is too many times we come into a conversation listening to respond. We're going to punch. We're going to show them. We're going to make sure our agenda is heard instead of dropping the agenda entirely and showing up to resolve an issue and find a solution that's a collective win-win-win across the board. Very different way you show up when you show up to listen to respond versus when you listen to understand. And when you show up to say it's not about what I need, it's about what we need and what's going to serve the collective whole, you come up with a way to actually let go of your agenda entirely, and you stay open to understanding and hearing and leaning into a real dialogue and conversation. And so as we get into the XYZ formula, that's exactly the opportunity. So say you've had some charged space with someone. And this goes into some of the questions from yesterday. So say you have that space where there's resistance, there's charge, you're like, I can't go have that conversation with my boss, they're gonna shut me down. I'm being too emotional, this is what's happening. I want you to first of all hit pause. And I do want you to go back to those, either one of those phrases that I mentioned yesterday. One of them is help me understand what you're reacting to. Help me understand what you heard me say. Help me understand why you're uncomfortable right now. Or just simply say, I understand that we're all feeling a little uncomfortable right now. How about we step away and take 30 minutes so everybody can collectively, regain their composure, process through whatever's going up. Leaders allow space in the conversation. And I want you to realize that is one of the biggest missed opportunities, is people feel they got to keep punching instead of going, you know what? I'm sensing everyone right now is feeling a little overwhelmed. I'm feeling the energy in the room just shifted. What I'd like to offer is that we take a 30-minute break, go outside, catch your breath, process. I know this got a little uncomfortable. What I want to do is to give everybody that space to lean in and breathe into this so that we can come back and continue this conversation from a open, present, because right now everybody's so caught up in their head. I want to take a break. I want you to process, and let's come back and bring this conversation back to the table. So I want you to realize you have permission to do that. I don't care what your role is in an organization. I don't care what your role is in your company. I don't care what your role is at home. You have an opportunity to ask for permission and make a suggestion that's going to serve all. Because the worst thing to do is keep pushing into that space where somebody is inadvertently going to say something they can't take back. It's amazing to me how ugly conversations get. I remember my mom and I used to have fights when things were not good. This is when she was really sick. This was shortly after the divorce. She was putting herself in the hospital because she was considering taking her life. I mean, she was just in a very bad place. And we would have these, because I stepped in at 12 years old as a parent, we would have conversations where when she felt she couldn't control my response to things, she would say, you're gonna be just like your father. And I remember I would quit back and say, well, it's better than being you. And I mean, that's ugly fighting. That's fighting that's unnecessary, instead of saying, right now we are both charged up. So before we say something that's going to be hurtful and harmful and debilitating to our relationship moving forward, I'm going to suggest that we both take a moment to catch our breath. I'm going to suggest that we separate and we allow ourselves to process and come back when we can come into a more neutral and less charged space, because no one has conversations when you're fully charged and amped. I want you to realize that there are no quality conversations that happen when you are being emotional. And until you can step away, now, in order to do that, you need to own and name the emotion. You need to allow yourself to lean in and take responsibility for that emotion. And you need to take responsibility for your role in that dynamic in order to then move into a space to have the XYZ equation work for you, so that you can then remove that charged emotion out of the equation and come back to a neutral space, so that you can both hear and see each other, instead of this just combat that starts to happen, this combative space. And so I want you to realize that there's a responsibility in that. Good morning, Deborah. Elise, yes, Jeff, 100%. And so I want you to realize your responsibility in this. I cannot stress this enough. You are ultimately responsible for how you show up. And so when you have taken that moment to own your emotion, to pull that back, to ask, and I will tell you, it is far better to say, I need to remove myself from this meeting, because right now I can feel myself being triggered, and I don't want to say something that's going to be disruptive. I don't want to say something that's going to be in a space that's just going to further add stuff to this conversation. I'm asking and I'm taking, and I would just get up and say, I need to take 30 minutes. I need to bring myself down. Because here's the thing, if you're in an environment where they're going to really judge you, challenge you, or tell you that that's unacceptable, I want you to rethink if that's the culture you want to play in. Because again, that's your responsibility to say. If you do not have an environment that says courageous conversations are present, and if you haven't watched Brene Brown's Call to Courage, please do so, because she will even say, if you are in an organization where perfectionism and fear and not being courageous are what's rewarded, then you get to rethink whether or not that's an environment you want to play in. You have a responsibility to decide whether or not that's an environment that serves you or not. And if it's not, then you can change that. There are other jobs, there are other spaces. Find the one that's going to allow you to be open and be nurturing. So the XYZ equation goes like this. When you are in a more neutral space, you simply say to somebody, hey, can we have I want to come back to something, that we talked about last week or whatever. I would love to have a conversation with you. And so what you do is you always frame the positive. Here's the win-win-win. And it might be something like, I know we really want our team to succeed. I know we got some big OP that just got brought down on us, and I'm speaking more corporate language at the moment, but it doesn't matter. And so maybe you're like, man, I know we got some big targets. I know we got some big goals for the rest of the year. And I know we all want to win. You want to help. You want this team to win, right? And so it's literally just engaging them in a space where you're both like, yeah, we want this. This is what we're moving towards. We're in agreement. Because when you already come to a space where you can have kind of that win-win-win, and you can look at it from, okay, we're in agreement here. You've already dissipated some of that any like ancillary or residual energy that's sitting there, and you can actually be more open to say, okay, we're both coming from the same space where we want to be successful here. We want the team to win. We want to be able to hit the OP, and that's where you're going to offer the and so here's the XYZ equation. You would start by saying, I noticed, I observed, I experienced, I heard, I saw X. Maybe it's, in our last couple meetings, I've noticed X, okay? So it's really important, and I want you to hear my words through this, because it's really important how you set this up. So you just gotten an agreement around the positive, and then I want you to step into space to say, our last couple meetings, I've noticed or I've experienced this has been happening, okay? So that's the X. I've noticed X. Then this is the most powerful statement, and one that most people are afraid of. I feel Y as a result. So you know what? In our last couple meetings, I noticed that the conversation's been shut down every time we talk about this. I feel like we aren't giving everybody an opportunity to voice their concerns. I feel like we're pushing an agenda instead of digging into the root cause of what's happening. And I feel like these meetings are becoming a waste of time because we already have a set agenda and solution. And so I feel like everybody is feeling slighted, not heard, we're wasting their time, whatever. And I personally feel like I get attacked in those meetings, and it might be whatever you say. You might even say, I get that that's me feeling that. It may not even be the case. I just wanted to share how I'm feeling because this has been coming up several times, okay? So you're taking an ownership. Notice how it's I noticed, not you did. I noticed, I feel, which is two of the most powerful words put together in the human language, English language, that we inadvertently are so afraid of. I feel has power. It is not weakness. I feel says I own. And it's not just, and here's the thing, it's not to say I feel pissed because I don't get heard. That's the cop out as well. Because what we do is the socially accepted feeling instead of saying I feel like I was slighted in that meeting. I feel as if my voice doesn't have a place there. I feel like my opinion doesn't matter. And I get that may be just on me. I just want to let you know that this is how I feel in those meetings, because then you get into the Z part of the equation, which is, could we perhaps approach this from a different perspective, the Z, so that we change the dynamic of those meetings so everybody can be heard? Do you see the power of that conversation? It is not coming from an emotionally charged, conflicted space. It is coming from a courageous, brave leadership position that says, I want us to be better. I know we can be better. I know you know we can be better. And I'm going to challenge both of us to raise our level of responsibility and take accountability to find a solution that works for everyone. Does that make sense for everybody? Good morning, Daryl. So I want you to think about that. I want you to think about how powerful. By the way, this works. This is marriage counselors use this for husbands and wives. It's amazing when you have that kind of conversation. And yes, at first it's going to feel clunky. And at first it's going to be awkward. It's no different than when they first introduced positive feedback streams in the corporate, where it was always like, thank you for the feedback. The thing is if you're just saying it and not really allowing yourself to be present, anything you say is going to be cheesy and campy and hokey, and it's going to feel like it's really forced. And when you take that on and take responsibility in that space and really lean into it, as clunky as it might feel, I guarantee it will change the dynamic of your relationships and the dynamic of your conversations. So I want you to really think about your role in that conversation. And here's the thing, if you're not getting the results you want now and you keep doing the same thing over and over again, it's the very definition of insanity. And so if you want a different result, are you willing to come at this from a different direction? And for those of you who are like, that's just, I don't know if I could do that. Are you getting the result you want? Are you feeling like you're heard? Do you feel like conversation stalls? And do you feel like it's just an ongoing, emotionally charged, energetically, combative space? Because ultimately you get to decide. And I'm going to tell you that conversation, that equation works. It's the frame the positive. I noticed, I experienced, I've observed X. I feel Y as a result. And I'm asking, can we approach this from Z to come up with a better solution? And so I'm curious, what are your thoughts about that? What's showing up as we talk about changing the yeah, but to a yes, and stepping into the XYZ equation to allow yourself to have more of those courageous, connected conversations? I would love to hear some feedback from those of you still on. What are you thinking? What's showing up for you? Can you see where this can be powerful? Can you see how this is a tool in your toolkit? Martha, thanks. Oh, have a great day too, Martha. I love that you were on. Thank you so much. So I want you to think about that. I want you to think about your role in the conversation. Ultimately, you are responsible for what you believe, what you expect, what you think, what you say, and what you do as a result. And if you are not getting the results you want, if you are not feeling like you are seen and heard, then how are you going to take that ownership to step into a place of your own personal power and have more courageous, connected conversations? Because no one's going to do it for you. And so I really want you to be mindful of where and how you're copping out, and to take that responsibility. And you'll notice I say and a lot because I really want you to have that bridge, and I want you to get in the habit of creating that bridge so that you're having deeper, more connected, richer, more powerful conversations. Myra, love it. Could have used this insight a few years ago, couldn't we all? Still would have left the organization, but now I have these tools moving forward in the businesses that I get to build. Exactly. And I am so with you. I remember one of my guys at GE when I was doing the training there, he came up to me on day 2 of training and he's like, Candy, when did you realize that if you would have had these tools when you were here, because that was where I hit rock bottom, that you would have actually, like, maybe you'd still be here and that it would have changed your whole projection of where you're at in your life? And I said, about the minute you asked me that question. So yes, hindsight's always 20/20, and you have the tools now. And so I want you to think about the fact that where maybe you didn't have these tools, you're ready for these tools now, and they are in your toolkit. So I give them to you so that you can show up. And so I love that, Myra. Thank you so much for sharing that. And so I hope that was helpful. I know there were some big questions yesterday. I hope, or I trust, that what I just shared with you, both in the yes but to the yeah but to the yes and the XYZ equation, that addresses some of those questions that came up yesterday. And again, emotions are not a bad thing. Emotions are a gauge on whether or not we're in alignment with ourselves, if we're in integrity, whether we're feeling congruent, whether something is crossing a boundary for us. We talked about that. You've got to start with knowing your own boundaries. What's okay for you, what's safe for you, what's not okay for you, what's not safe for you, and what's non-negotiable. When you have personal power around your own boundaries, it's okay to feel emotion. Just like fear, they are nothing more than an indicator of, am I really in alignment with myself, or is something an opportunity for me? And so I want you to realize, feel into your emotions, name your emotions, and take responsibility for your emotions in terms of how you choose to have the conversation from there. And so Terry, I got called away for a minute. I think I got all the concepts, but not clear on what the XYZ equation is. Can you say it again short? Yes. XYZ equation, very simply, frame the positive. Then it is I noticed, I experienced, I observed X. I feel Y as a result. And Z is what I propose for how we approach arriving to a new solution. And so I want you to think about that as the XYZ equation in a very condensed way. If you need to go back, I suggest you go back and view the video if you need more detail behind that, but I hope that answered your question, Terry. Elaine, I love this, creates a leadership approach instead of a manager approach. Yes, and that's a discussion for another day. I'm actually going to get into how I don't think managing people is even a real thing. You can manage products and systems, and people are not to be managed, they are to be led. And so yes, we want to have that distinction, but this absolutely 1000% puts you in a space to lead with love, from love. And when you step up courageously, you teach others to do the same. So it starts with you. I hope that you will say yes to yourself. I hope you are finding these Facebook Lives to continue to be powerful. We are going to continue to stay in some of this theme this week, as I have some other tools and resources I want to share with you. But until tomorrow, which is our Wednesday Wonder Space, just want you all to say, I love you. I want you to have a phenomenal and beautiful Tuesday. And today is the day that you choose to be a leader at your next level. And so wishing you well. We'll see you all tomorrow. Take care, everyone.